equipment planning, we will just be try and understand how we group various areas in any hospital design. So as you can see in the screen, the areas in the hospital can be categorized into six groups. So group one majorly contains the outpatient department. Why we are doing this grouping is about their functional need. So equipments will also be planned in that way that will group the equipments accordingly. So group one considers of outpatient department wherein we have consultation rooms, various specialty clinics, sample collection areas, amenities, retail pharmacy, shops, snack bar, and other public areas that we have next to the outpatient department. All these will be clubbed in group one.
All I want to add here is that we have two types of clinics. One is called a time sharing clinics. So it could be a medicine clinics, a heart clinic, or a liver clinic or something. So there are journal time sharing clinics and there are instrument clinics like a dental OPD or a ENT OPD, wherein there are instruments there or equipment there. So those cannot be shared by various departments. Only that specialty will share that space. So we have soft areas where there are not too many equipment and hard areas which are equipment intensive areas.
Similarly, we have another group for like emergency critical services. So we have emergency department, which will include the triage facilities, resuscitation areas, procedure rooms, treatments, and observation wards.
I want to add here, in the emergency department, we have 4 tracks. So we have a medicine and medical disciplines, surgery and surgical disciplines, pediatrics, because pediatrics is only a pediatrician who can understand, and OBY and gynae. So on the tracks, we take the patients. So medicine or medical disciplines will require observation. Surgical will require triaging and very urgent procedures. And so similarly, the 4 tracks would work, and it works like.
Then on the third group, we have the diagnostics area, wherein all the major equipments that we think of, like imaging equipment, radiology equipment, wherein we have MRI, CT scans, DSA, mammography, bone marrow density, and all these heavy equipments of the diagnostics will be grouped in group three, which will also have non-invasive equipment like ECG, TMT, Doppler, and all those equipments also.
Yeah, somebody has to mute. And then what I want to add is the invasive and non-invasive have to be kept separately, which means a mammography room or a ultrasound room and a X-ray has to be away from each other, because one is a non-invasive procedure and another is an invasive diagnostics. So we don't want any harmful radiation to go to a pregnant lady or to so the compatibility of spaces has to be done by a planner, a designer, health facility planner, architect, or people who do functional requirements or zoning. That's very important.
And then another group we have as a treatment units, wherein we have pre-operative zone, operation theater, our intensive care units, high dependency units, step down ICUs. So all critical beds comprises in these treatment zone, uh, group four. Then we have nursing units, wherein we have our private rooms, semi-private rooms, multi bed wards, physiotherapy and physical rehabilitation, and those areas.
So these 5 groups are where the patients are. And then we have support services, which is the engineering services, the air conditioning plant room, the DG sets, boilers, electrical transformers, electrical panels, HT panel, LT panel, and we have water treatment plant, sewer treatment plant, water storage tank, fire tank. So we have 6 types of waters: soft water, potable water, recycled water, hard water, and so water for various. So we treat and we recycle and we use the water. So then we have the hospital services, the medical supports, hospital services like kitchen, laundry, CSSD, biomedical workshops, medical records departments, housekeeping stores, central pharmacy, biomedical waste, mortuary, staff changing rooms, security, central command and control stations, administrative departments, the medical superintendent and the directors and the administrators, so various management people. So
Maya,
this is the
liberi sama
functional
Maya,
relationship.
sama Adi.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, make
Yeah.
sure that your microphones are muted. الناس اللي فاتحة المايك يا شباب نستأذنكم تقفلوا المايك. Yes, proceed.
Yeah, yeah. So to start with the medical equipment planning, we need to understand the basic planning of hospital. That's why we were explaining about these groups, that how we have these different groups in our hospital so that the proximities of the department and we can prepare a good functional program of our hospital before we proceed to equipment planning. So, see, in a similar way, we need to understand each and every department's standard operating procedures. Like what happens in each department, that also we need to understand. So here we are showing in the screen some example of standard operating procedure for diagnostic department X-ray. So there may be OPD patient coming to X-ray department, or there may be IPD patients coming to. So what is the patient flow? Where the patient is moving? Similarly, the SOPs for staff areas, for staff movement, for utility movements, for instrument movement, all these has to be known if we are planning to prepare an equipment plan for our hospital.
Like we say, in the daytime, we have OPD patients and we schedule them in the daytime. The inpatients who are captive with us, we can schedule them at night. So the equipment is used round the clock. In the daytime, we use the equipment for OPD or ambulatory patients who come to the hospital and go out. 80% of the patients are that, and the equipment for the rest of the 20% of the patients is used at night. So we have optimum utilization of the equipment.
So we need to understand the SOPs or standard operating procedures of each department. So it's a complete teamwork. The complete departments, the doctors, the staff, paramedic staff, support staff, and the designer, the planner, all have to brainstorm together to understand what are the policies of the hospital, because hospitals can also be classified in number of ways. So what is the vision of our facility wherein we have to plan the equipment. Everything has to be kept in mind, understand the policy, all the department, then we will move on to preparing the
Yeah,
equipment
by
plan.
policies he meant was level of care, primary, secondary, tertiary, or apex, or the ownership of the hospital. Are we a government hospital, a state government hospital, a charitable hospital, a corporate hospital? Accordingly, the usages and the policies would be different.
Definitely. And then another general consideration before even we move on to the equipment planning, that in the design itself, in the building itself, we should consider the modularity in design. As the image shown in the image is for the same structure grid can be utilized for various different functions. If you can see in the screen, the same grid, we can have a suite room, we can have single rooms, we can have double rooms, we can have six-bedded ward within the same structural grid. So that kind of modularity we need in our design, which will help us plan our equipment efficiently.
Modernization and expansion, continuity and change. So that is a keyword which we have to remember for hospital planning. So we have to do the grid layout, the planning modules, and the structural modules, and the services, structures, and equipment. They all have to be coordinated right at the planning stage and throughout the design development, the equipmenting, construction, the operations and maintenance, and later on.
Yeah. Then another important consideration nowadays, the integration of the system. The various service systems we have in our building, like security, access control, fire alarm system, lighting systems, our air conditioning systems, even boom barriers, parking lot, the digital signages, the facade lightings, the integrated camera systems, and all the temperature control, lighting control, environment control, and data networking within the areas in the hospital. So all this has to be integrated with a common software that we call as building management systems.
So we have to have a central command and control station wherein the fire control, the building management, the building controls, all these to make a green, smart, safe hospital.
Another consideration is about the materials that we are going to use, about the signages, how we are, because the radiation protection zones wherein we are having the heavy equipments, radiation prone equipments, those signages, those warning signs has to be placed. Then about the thing.
Yeah, it's very, very important that the operation theaters and all would have conductive flooring. So we have it all inbuilt in the materials we get, but it's very important to do independent earthing and grounding very properly. So the idea is that there are various stakeholders and team members, and all of them have to be involved right from the concept or inception stage of the project. So we have to have the project life cycle, the inception stage, the conceptual stage, the pre-construction stage, the construction stage, the O&M stage, and the refurbishment or redoing and all those things which we're going to talk later in this presentation.
So these were the few general consideration that before in the building itself, when we are planning and designing the hospital, the equipment planning will also start at very initial stage. So we have to have these general consideration while doing so. Then another important is for when we are doing the equipment planning, even in design, these boom barriers, the wall guards has
Or
to be
the
placed.
bumper rails, the kick plates, and all those things are very important because a stretcher is moved by a person from the other end, and at the front end of the stretcher, it hits the wall and it hits the door. So it's very important to have the bumpers there to prevent any scratches or damages to the doors and to the walls.
So those kind of construction
Detailing.
details are also to be looked into when we are designing our hospital building, where the heavy equipment movements are there. So now we start on to with our equipment planning part. So equipment planning, as we said earlier also, it's a complete teamwork. So the project team may comprises of health service planner, health facility planner or architects, structural engineers, MEP engineers, then equipment vendors it themselves, then the owner of the hospital or the client, then end user, which are patients, staff, paramedic staffs and all. So the complete team, because we need to have inputs from all these stakeholders to able to have efficient equipment planning.
What is very important is that balancing factors between the different departments of a hospital. One department cannot be very high end, another department at a very, very basic level. So balancing factors are very, very important between different departments and the end user or the doctor. What are their, comfort levels, ease of using, and compatibility, all those things have to be
Also,
taken
we
care of.
may have shared equipments between two departments. So all the stakeholders, all the inputs are required to plan efficiently.
And all this has to be recorded and minutes of the meetings maintained so that at a later stage, people cannot say that I was not involved, I was not consulted, my opinion was not taken, or I didn't know, or I was not kept in the loop.
Exactly. So the project team has to be there for the equipment planning. Now talking about the process. So initially we'll have to create something called FF&E, which is furniture, fixtures, and equipment scheduling. So we need to have a broad idea of what all equipment we are going to plan in that particular facility, in that particular hospital. With from where we will get this, we'll get this from the brief that has been prepared, the functional briefs, the technical brief, the schedule of accommodation, and whatever the existing equipment database. Because in many cases, there are few equipment that hospital or facility want to refurbish, reuse, in one way or the other. So we need to understand that existing equipment database also.
So we have to be very sustainable. We have to be very cost effective. We have to be very prudent, and it has to be, these are very important decisions which are very expensive, and there are life cycle costing implications. Like Sandal wanted to tell us whether we should buy our equipment or lease our equipment. So there are various financial models which work. So maybe you can elaborate that.
Yeah. So in to start with, first of all, we'll have our basic furniture, fixtures, and equipment schedule as per our functional program. Then we'll further detail it out. We'll prepare a master furniture, fixtures, and equipment list that will be at the level of individual rooms itself. So we'll write down each room and we'll write down the equipment required in those particular room via consulting all these stakeholders involved. As we said earlier, the project team. So with all the team members, will make down this master fixture furniture list with all the inputs.
And when we have a room data sheet, we have the floor, the ceiling, the four walls, what goes where, if we have equipment, what are the power requirements, what are the air conditioning requirements, what are the medical gases, or what are the inputs and outputs, whether it's a pendant control or mounted, wall mounted. So where is, like we are sitting here, so we have a fan right on top of us. So the location of the fan as per the furniture layout and the switches and controls and all that are very important, that we do the furniture layout of each and every room. So we first do the space planning, the room location, the room numbering, then the room data sheets, which we're going to share with you in the coming slides. Yeah.
So once we have these furniture fittings and equipment scheduling with us, then we may start doing the cost analysis part of it. So the cost analysis and reporting process against the agreed furniture fittings and equipment budget is developed. So once we'll have our schedule, then we'll have some budget against it. So we need to understand what are the budgets and what are the lists that we are preparing. So that has to be, every stakeholder has to be on one same line, same page.
And the funds flow mechanism and all those things have to be worked out beforehand.
So by room data sheet, what sir was explaining us earlier, the room data sheet would look something like this. So all the rooms that has been planned, even in the concept design stage, which will further be detailed out in a schematic and then design development. But at every stage, we must have our room data sheets so that we understand what are the finishes, what are the environment control requirements, what are the equipment that are going to be used in that particular room. So every room by room, we should have room data sheets and then the room layout sheets. There's an example of room layout sheet has been shown in the screen, that by room layout sheet, we will get to know all sides of all walls of my room, what is happening where. Where is the fixtures? Where is the plug point? Where is the oxygen point needed? What are the equipments in the room? What are the air controls? What all services are required for that particular room. So these kind of room layout and room data sheets has to be prepared for entire hospital.
Yeah, like we say, the toilet door has to open outwards. And where is the space for the outlets, power sockets, and medical gases and other things? So we as we see this room data sheet,
And we
it's
have
very self-explanatory.
international health facility briefing systems, and those online datas are available wherein you can see a sample room layout sheet and room data sheets for each and every room of the hospitals. So that also you can see for the reference, and but something similar has to be prepared
for each and every hospital. Diagnosis before treatment and survey before plan. So no two hospitals are same, no two cases are same. So it has to be location specific, site specific, project specific. And according to your needs, it has to be prepared for each project specifically.
once we have our schedule in hand, in place, the furniture fittings and equipment schedule is in place, then we'll proceed with something called responsibilities matrix, because there are so many players involved in the entire process, and we need to understand who's responsible, who's supporting the function, and who is exactly responsible at various stage. A table, a sample of responsibility matrix is shown in the slide here, presented in the slides. As you can see, there are architectural interior designers, structural engineers, MEP engineers, all these players are there. And at certain stage, whose main responsibility is and who is giving the supporting functions to primary player. So that kind of responsibility matrix has to be developed in the process of equipment planning so that there are no clashes, there are accountability of each and every task, and everyone is working as a team. So yes.
Who's answerable, who's supporting, and who, action taken by whom and when is very, very important to document and to record all these things. So it's a process by which safety, environmental country considerations, green buildings, environmental conditions, all those things are taken care of, and time, cost, and quality is also maintained.
For example, as architect, when the functional program is there in place, the architect must have designed the room, the space, as per the input given by the various other players, maybe electrical engineers, plumbing engineers, or sometimes even the equipment vendors. But that the entire team has to sit down and verify or vet that particular information produced before commencing it to on-site or construction. So we have to ensure appropriate location, provision, spatial, and service requirements are identified, which are in place with the equipment vendors, with the engineers, with the architects, and everyone in the thing. After that, we'll prepare a general equipment specifications. Once the spatial layouts are in place, the schedule are in place, all stakeholders are in one page, then we'll prepare a generic equipment specifications to confirm the product type. Like X-ray machine, we may have n number of vendors for a similar kind of machine. So we have to develop our specifications afterwards to confirm the product type, and equipment service packages has to be developed afterwards.
We have to put in a contract that we get the latest version of the equipment or the machine which we had ordered. So we have to specify in the contract that we get the latest version of the softwares and the equipment that we are going
And
to
for
get.
preparing those things, we have to loop in the equipment vendors also. Maybe we call in more than two or three vendors, and we get information from all these vendors about equipment layout, electrical load, the air conditioning requirement, the structural consideration itself, the radiation safety consideration. All this has to be understood and placed as our specifications for the particular equipment.
We have regulatory requirements. So we have an atomic energy regulatory board here in India, which comes and which checks and which sees and then gives us a go ahead, and only then we can plan, design, construct, and use a radiation safety measures, we call them.
Once our specifications are in place, then we'll proceed ahead with a procurement plan, or we'll decide with all the stakeholders involved, we'll decide upon the timelines for the procurement. Like when, at what date or what time certain equipments has to be procured. So every equipment may have their waiting periods. You order it now, you might get the equipment 3 months after, like for linear accelerators or PET-CT machines, they have their waiting period. Even if you order today, you will get the equipment after 3 months or even 2 months. So we have to plan out our procurement timelines accordingly. We need to understand what are the timelines of the entire project, when do we want our facility to be operated, and we have to work backwards. That if I want my facility to be operated in a year's time, then from now, after 3 months,
I have to firm orders before that in order to take care of the lean time or the time which they will take to deliver the.
Yeah, so the equipment procurement plan will be developed and it will be fully integrated into project building plan. Then procurement plan will also have the procurement methodology, like how we are going to. There may be certain equipment that we club together. There may be 10 different vendors from where we are getting our equipments from, but we'll club certain equipment to certain vendors. So whatever your methodology, whatever your plan, that has to be detailed out in your procurement plan. So after a specification, we'll have to prepare a procurement plan for the equipment to be purchased or to be procured. So certain things like group purchasing, if we keep on ordering single instrument or single machine every time, it may cost us a lot.
And it will be a repetitive process. So there are certain equipment which maybe are coming from same sources. So we could order them all together and that will be cost effective.
Or we can do the entire phasing depending upon the budget. Even for the equipment also, we can do phasing. Like if we have, let's say 20 ICU beds, so we can phase them out depending upon the facility type, mix, and the disease pattern. So another important part is relocation of existing equipment. If certain new equipments are coming and there are already existing equipment in the facilities, so we have to well in advance plan for the relocation of existing equipments so that ongoing services should not get affected.
And what are the size of the equipment? What level are they? How do they come? How they are reached? The logistics of maybe entering the complex and testing, commissioning, calibration, and operations. All these things take time, and there are regulatory and other compliances which have to be taken care of.
After that, we'll have after procurement plan, then we'll have to think about the site supervision, like including the delivery, installation, testing, and commissioning of medical equipment needs to take place with proper documentation, like what model number, which company equipment we are procuring, which model and what are their annual maintenance contracts. And all those has to be
preventive maintenance, when what care has to be taken, the numbers and all those things have to be documented very well. So this preventive maintenance schedule has to be developed and implemented and taken care of.
So this was the general process of equipment planning that we have discussed. But then there are certain key considerations. We had talked about general consideration in terms of building itself. Then we talked about the process, how equipment planning has to be done. But there are certain key consideration which by the experience we get to know of various projects. So for to start with, we have to plan for future. So we need to see beyond what the current circumstances are and expect the facility to grow over time. So whenever we are planning or even whenever we are doing the equipment scheduling itself, we need to talk to all the stakeholders, the concerned department, and we have to work out a plan wherein we are keeping in mind the future need of that particular department.
So various departments will expand in various different stages. A very good example is if you see a baby, the baby grows and the different limbs and organs grow at different states. Maybe the eyes remain the same, the limbs and the other extremities are growing at much longer or much more than certain other organs of the body. Similar is the expansion of a hospital. Certain departments will do much better and expand much more. Certain others will not expand certain. Like certain demographics, the population is not expanding as much. Places like India, we have too many babies being born. So maternity, gynecology, women and children departments normally do very, very well. But in certain other countries, we have too many aging population, too much of cancers and all those things. So the departments would expand according to the context, the site, the location, the culture, and the people and disease patterns and things like that.
Yeah, so that's an important consideration while we are doing the equipment scheduling itself. Then the another important part is we need to know the vendor and their equipment delivery process. Something we called as vendor assessment. So we have to do in-depth vendor assessment, which may start with a background preparation, manageable list of vendors, those who are available, then evaluating the vendors by asking around about their previous works, by looking at their previous work, their experience, their financial sheets, account sheets, and all those things. Then evaluating the vendor proposal. Different vendors will give you different proposals, maybe different payment plan, maybe different annual maintenance contract. So we have to evaluate each vendor's proposal, and then overall we have to in-depth vendor assessment needs to be carried out.
So we have a life cycle costing. So we have the initial investment, the consumables, and the other AMCs or uh, spares and all those things, and turnaround time and breakdown and all that, and upkeep and all those things. So this you biomedical engineers know much better than we architects and planners. But in theory, we know this is how it works.
Then, as sir earlier said, that while planning the equipments, we need to consider the regulations regarding local building codes, your national legislatures, whatever the industrial standards are prevailing in the region, that has to be considered. Like in India, we have Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, we have National Accreditation Board for hospitals, and we have other national building
National
codes.
building codes, international building codes, we have NFPA, the fire regulations, and other radiation and other regulatory statutory requirements. They have to be taken care of as per the laws of the land wherever you are working.
So similarly, we have Gahar in case of Egypt. So all these regulations have to be taken care of while planning the equipment. We should not select any equipment which is not in compliance with the local norms or local regulations. Then we have to understand, and whenever we are planning the equipment, the timelines have to be such that when the equipments are coming in the hospital for installation or for calibration is happening, it should not interrupt my patients and workflow. So the timings are very important. We have to make sure that all medical equipments orders are shipped and installed within the appropriate timeline.
So we have to see that the hospital goes while it grows, which means it has to be functional, operational, and the expansion is also happening at the same time. So these are very, very, in project management, these are very
Yeah,
important.
so we have to plan out the timelines, we have to plan out these things that when it is coming, when even for the maintenance of the equipment also. When OPD is not there, when patient flow is low, then only we can plan out these things.
So we have to schedule all those things in a very planned way.
Then another important consideration is that we have to involve the department. Many a times it has been seen that equipment planners and the procurement persons and heads, they discuss among themselves and they purchase a new equipment for a department without consulting the concerned department themselves. So that should not be the case. The department that will be continually dealing with the new medical equipment will need to have a lot of participation in planning up to the delivery, because they are the person who are going to operate on that particular equipment or instrument. So they have to be listened to, their preferences. It might not be the case that the latest technology available, your people are also equipped to use that technology.
So the training, the skill development, and the vendors, uh, guarantee, warranty, hand holding, training, all those things have to be inbuilt in the contract and has to be implemented along with the delivery schedules.
And at the last, before even transferring the ownership, we have to properly check, test, and we have to ensure the quality of the equipment before actually purchasing it or ownership transfer.
The calibration, the softwares, and the
Compatibility.
all those things have to be worked out, seen, tested, operated, and then handed over.
So these are the some considerations from the experience and from various projects that we'll have to look into while doing the equipment planning. Now, once the equipment is done, we have procured, we have installed, we have operated, we have maintained. Then after the life cycle of equipment, either there are two possibilities: either we refurbish or we will replace the equipment. So now there are certain equipment that we can be leased out, right? So that can be leased out. So we may not purchase the equipment, but we just lease out the equipment for certain period of time, depending upon the caseload of the hospital, of the facility. Now we have to think which is better, whether to purchase any equipment or whether to lease out any equipment. So for that reason, we need to understand the advantages and disadvantages of both the cases. So capex means here is capital expenditure and opex means the operating expenditures. So advantages, as you can see in capital expenditure, if I am purchasing any equipment, then I'll may have low cost of consumables, reagents and tests, accurate ordering of consumable reagent based on actual consumptions, because the equipment is mine. So I will order consumable which are fit for my use only. Whereas the disadvantage could be upfront payment has to be done because I'm purchasing the equipment, then pay for breakdown services, replacement. If I have a maintenance contract that will also last for 2 years or 3 years, then I'll have to have a recurring cost of continuously uh, continuing my maintenance contract, then pay for a planned preventive maintenance after warranty period, then additional cost for upgrading the equipment. This is the case when I am purchasing the equipment. Whereas when I have leasing the equipment, the operating cost is then I don't have to pay anything upfront. That is an advantage. Then breakdown, service parts, replacements are all covered because I am not owning that equipment. I am just leasing it up. Then planned preventive maintenance costs are also covered. Equipment depreciation is irrelevant because I am not owning that equipment. Then equipment upgrades with no additional cost because I'll just remove that equipment. I'll lease out the latest one. So
The newer technology, the newer equipment, the newer modalities,
but
all
then
those
the
things can be taken.
disadvantages are there will be higher cost of consumable because when someone is leasing it out, then they will be selling you the consumables of that related equipment. So higher cost of consumables will be there. Then qualities will be based on projection only for first few years because you don't know. You have just leased it out, the quality you cannot control. Then depending on the actual workload, some reagents may expire if not used during the contract periods. So these are certain advantages and disadvantages that we'll have to see case to case basis.
Yeah.
It may not apply to every instrument or every equipment, but there are certain equipment that can be looked at this level also, that whether we should buy it or we should lease it out. For example, the oxygen generation tanks, the liquid medical oxygens, there are now companies internationally also, they lease out the cylinder, the LMOs, and you can either purchase the entire plant and set up a plant in your hospital, or you can just lease out the LMOs and you pay a recurring cost for the gases. So those kind of cost benefit analysis has to be done while making the equipment scheduling. Those things will have to keep in mind. Then, as we also have online courses on planning and designing of hospitals, we have done in previous also, and will be
Very keen to, for develop such courses for Africa and Middle East region. So whenever you say you have a requirement for such courses, we are ready to offer you online courses. Thank you very much.
Now we are open to any
Two
questions.
questions. Yeah.
Any
So let's see
questions?
the chat. There are a lot of questions on the chat. So somebody is to moderate and we'll answer the questions.
Fixed, okay. It's
Okay.
already answered, except furniture and equipment. Okay. Is there any question which are unanswered yet? We,
So you can unmute and ask us questions.
IPD is inpatient department and OPD is outpatient
Outpatient department.
department. PDs and RDs. It may be the zones, maybe emergency
Yeah.
department. Room data sheets and room layout sheet. RDS is room data sheet. RLS is room layout sheet. Should the ceiling plan be in room layout sheet? Yes, definitely. Ceiling plan should also be there in room layout sheets. And because you see in case of operation theater, we have pendants, we have anesthetic pendants, we have surgeon pendants. There are certain fixtures and there are certain services which we are hanging out of the ceiling. So
The idea is to keep the floor clutter-free, as much clutter-free as possible. Otherwise, there are wires and fixtures and fittings, and doctors and anesthesists and all are tripping over the floor. So it's very important to take all the services from pendants from the ceiling.
I didn't get this question. For the hospital before starting, is there any reference for hospital before starting?
There are a lot of references. So the references are your GAHAR, your international standards, international building codes, your national building codes, your local regulatory development agencies requirements. So what are the development controls? I could say, what is your site area? What is your boundary conditions? What are your setbacks? What are your fire regulations? What are your ground coverages, height restrictions, helipads, basements, multi-level parkings, and things like that. So we could do a
the cost of
for
hospital before at least we should be aware of the budgets, the construction budget, the equipment budget, because we are talking about equipment planning. So we need to understand the overall cost of the project. Then only we can plan out the things. Like it could be 100-bedded hospital, it could be 500-bedded hospital. It all depends on your site area, how much you can develop over in that particular area, and what is your budget. According to the budget, you will develop.
Yeah, thank you. So the ISO standards and national standards, we could cover them in another talk. So all those standards,
so there are
codes,
classification
guides,
metrics
norms,
and all those.
And regulations we can cover in a different topic on another day. You can come up with some more requirements and we could cover them.
Any further question?
Guys, if you have any question, you can give these questions, drop it down in the comment section or in the messages. اللي عنده أي سؤال يا شباب يقدر يسأله دلوقتي. Thank you.
So we have shared the presentation with you people and yeah. So we'll send you the modified one also. So we added some more slides to it and we could send them to resource person we have with us. And
so I hope if there are no questions, we can thank you everyone for having us here.
yeah. So maybe we could take a. So all these fees and all those questions would be a little difficult for us to answer, but depending
Definitely,
on
it
your
depends on the case to case basis.
yeah.
If we have a proper example of what we are going to, because we need to understand the scope, how much it will
Yeah,
be.
is there any area per bed? Yes, I have done that. So in India, the largest area per bed for a hospital is 200 square meters per bed, which is very high. In a medical college teaching hospital, it's around 100 square meters per bed. In a very basic hospital, it is 30 square meters per bed. 30, 60, 90, 100, 120, 200 square meters per bed, depending on the complexity.
And as
The,
per international health facility or international standard, if we talk about, it will come around 150 square meter per bed.
if it's a medical college, teaching hospital, big 500 beds or more. So a 30 bed general hospital is 30 square meters per bed. A very, very super specialty hospital could be 200 square meters. Between them is a range.
Okay, I guess answered, and we can take up questions over mail also.
Yeah.
You have the contact.
Or we could chat, we could make a WhatsApp group, or so many ways wherein we could keep communicating.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
love to join anytime back whenever you need us.
We could plan out and we could work out some more sessions if needed.
Thank you very much. We would like to thank you for that such a great and beneficial session. And if they have any questions, as you said, we can contact each other and make a group chat.
Yes.
And guys, also let me say in Arabic, شباب السيشن احنا بعتنا اللي هو الفورم بتاع الفورم بتاع الفيدباك، يا ريت كل اللي حاضر يملاه علشان ده بتاع الشهاده. For all people presenting here in the session, please don't forget to enroll in this feedback form because you're going to receive your certificate. And let me say it once again, thank you very much for such a great session. We are looking forward to meeting you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Yeah.